Sometimes, the people who want to kill you are the ones who claim to love you the most. I stood silently by my grandfather's grave, these words echoing in my mind as the last mourners departed. The rain had stopped just in time for the funeral, but the air remained heavy with moisture, matching the weight in my chest. My name is Cassandra, and today I buried the last person who truly loved me. The autumn wind rustled through the cemetery's oak trees, carrying with it the bitter scent of wet earth and dying leaves. I glanced across the grave and saw my mother, Amanda, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. Next to her stood her husband of 8 years, Gregory, and his 2 college-aged children, Isabella and Lucas. They were all dressed in black, looking appropriately somber, but I knew better. None of them had visited grandfather Theodore even once during his 3-month hospital stay. I had been the one sitting by his bedside, holding his hand as cancer slowly took him away from me. I had watched him fade, day by day, while they carried on with their lives as if he didn't exist. "Cassandra," my mother called out after the ceremony ended, her voice carrying that artificial sweetness I'd grown to despise. "Thank you for arranging everything. Theodore would have appreciated it." Before I could respond, a man in a charcoal suit approached us. "Miss Mitchell, I'm Michael, your grandfather's attorney. I need to speak with you about the reading of his will." My mother perked up at the mention of the will, her grief momentarily forgotten. "When will this take place?" she asked, poorly disguising her interest. "Now, if that's convenient," Michael replied, looking at me for confirmation. "That's fine," I answered, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. 20 minutes later, we all gathered in my grandfather's spacious living room. The house seemed emptier now, though nothing had been moved since his death. The antique grandfather clock in the corner ticked away steadily, marking time in a world that felt suddenly unmoored. "Let's proceed," Michael said, sensing the tension. He sat down at the dining table and removed several documents from his briefcase. "I'll begin with the formal reading of the last will and testament of Theodore James Mitchell." As Michael read through the legal preamble, I watched my mother's face. She was leaning forward slightly, her eyes focused on the papers in Michael's hands. Isabella, my stepsister, kept glancing around the room, mentally cataloging items as if she was already deciding what she wanted. "To my beloved granddaughter, Cassandra Elizabeth Mitchell, I leave my entire estate," Michael continued, "including my primary residence at 2275 Maple Grove Drive, my vacation home at Pine Valley Lake, and all financial assets totaling approximately $1,500,000,000. The room went silent. I wasn't surprised. Grandfather had always made it clear that I would inherit everything, but the looks on the others' faces were priceless. Isabella's mouth literally fell open, and my mother's smile froze in place. Additionally, Michael continued, "To Amanda Mitchell, I leave my silver kitchen set, which she always admired." My mother straightened up. "What? The silver set? That's all?" Michael nodded. "That's correct." "Old fool," she muttered under her breath. I felt a surge of anger. "That set is worth several $1,000s, I said coldly, "and he didn't owe you anything." Michael quickly wrapped up the reading and explained to me the process for transferring the properties and assets. Throughout his explanation, Isabella kept glaring at me while Lucas stared at his phone, trying to look bored but clearly disappointed. After Michael left, my mother turned to me. "Cassandra, you need to consider sharing some of this inheritance with us. Your father would have wanted his family taken care of." "My father has been dead for 3 years, I replied evenly, "and grandfather Theodore was my family. The only real family I've had since Dad died." "That's not fair." Isabella suddenly interjected. "You don't deserve all this. What makes you so special?" I looked at my mother, waiting for her to defend me. She said nothing. Her silence said everything I needed to know. "Well, Isabella," I said calmly, "since you're so deserving, I'm sure you'll have no problem making your own fortune. Now, I'd like you all to leave my house." They shuffled out, grumbling and shooting me dirty looks. As soon as they were gone, I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing the tears to come. After a few minutes, I wiped my eyes and went to grandfather's office. I needed to sort through his papers and start figuring out my new reality. As I sat at his desk, memories flooded back. After Dad died when I was 28, everything changed. Mom met Gregory a year later, and suddenly she was focused on building her new family. When they married and Gregory moved in with his kids, I became an afterthought in my own home. Isabella, who was 2 years younger than me, would steal my things and then deny it. She'd damage my work documents and blame it on their dog. Lucas would make crude comments when no adults were around. And Mom, she was too busy trying to be the perfect wife and stepmother to notice what was happening to her own daughter. Grandfather Theodore became my refuge. I'd stay at his house whenever I could, weekends, holidays, sometimes even weeknights if I had a lot of work. No one at home seemed to care or even notice my absence. When I finally moved out, buying my own place across town, Mom only visited twice, both times to ask for money. Now Grandfather was gone, and I was alone. But at least I had a home, his home, and enough financial security to figure out what I wanted to do next. As I sorted through his papers, I made a silent promise to honor his memory by making the most of the gift he'd given me. Little did I know that this inheritance would trigger a chain of events that would reveal just how far my own mother would go to get what she wanted. The truth about family, love, and betrayal was about to unfold in ways I never could have imagined. And it all began with a dinner invitation that should have been a warning sign. Several weeks passed after the funeral. I had moved my essential belongings into Grandfather's house, my house now, though most of my things remained in boxes, stacked against walls like physical manifestations of my reluctance to fully settle in. The familiar scent of leather-bound books and old wood still lingered in every room, a constant reminder of the man who had made this place a sanctuary. One Saturday morning, as I was sorting through Grandfather's old books in his study, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached the door cautiously and checked through the peephole. My mother stood on the porch with Isabella beside her, both wearing bright smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I opened the door reluctantly. "Mom, Isabella, what are you doing here?" "Cassandra, sweetie," my mother stepped forward and hugged me before I could react. "I've come to pick up the silver service Theodore left me. I figured it was a good chance for us to catch up, right?" I stepped aside to let them in, watching as my mother headed straight for the kitchen while Isabella lingered in the living room, her eyes scanning every corner like she was taking inventory. "God, this place is so depressing," she said, running a finger along the bookshelf. "It looks like a museum for old people. If this was my house, I'd gut it completely, new furniture, new paint, maybe knock down a few walls to open it up." "Well, it's not your house," I replied calmly, "and I happen to like it this way." Isabella rolled her eyes. "Whatever. You always did have weird taste." I bit my tongue, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Instead, I walked toward the kitchen to check on Mom. She was carefully wrapping each piece of the silver service in newspaper. After she finished packing the silver, we stood awkwardly in the entryway. I expected them to leave, but Mom surprised me. "Cassandra, I've been thinking, we should try to rebuild our relationship. You don't have any close family left now that Theodore is gone." I almost laughed at her sudden interest in my well-being. "That's true," I said non-committally. "Why don't you come over for dinner next Saturday? I'll make all your favorites, roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, and that chocolate cake you loved as a kid." I was about to refuse when something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity, or perhaps some small part of me still hoped for the mother I'd lost years ago. "Okay," I said finally. "What time?" Mom's smile widened. 7 o'clock. Gregory and Lucas will be there too. It'll be a proper family dinner." After they left, I sat on the porch swing, trying to figure out what had just happened. Mom hadn't shown interest in my life for years, and now suddenly she wanted family dinners. The timing was suspicious, coming right after I'd inherited a substantial fortune, but maybe, just maybe, losing Grandfather had made her realize the importance of family. The week passed quickly, and before I knew it, Saturday arrived. I dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, not wanting to look like I was trying too hard. At 7 o'clock sharp, I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the once vibrant garden now overgrown and neglected. I hesitated before ringing the doorbell, a flood of memories washing over me. This was where I'd grown up, where I'd played with Dad, where I'd felt safe and loved, until I didn't anymore. Gregory answered the door. "Cassandra," he said with a nod, his usual greeting. He'd never bothered with hugs or even handshakes. Inside, Mom bustled around the dining room, setting the table with the silver service she'd just acquired from Grandfather's house. Lucas sat on the couch, playing a video game, barely acknowledging my presence. "Cassandra, you're right on time," Mom called. "Dinner's almost ready. Can I help with anything?" "No need, I've got it all under control." "Make yourself at home. Make yourself at home." The irony wasn't lost on me. This had been my home once, but now I felt like a stranger here. I decided to wander around while Mom finished in the kitchen. The living room was mostly the same, though the family photos now featured more of Gregory's kids than me. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, running my hand along the banister where Dad had once measured my height with pencil marks. "Looking for something?" Isabella's voice came from behind me. "Just taking a walk down memory lane," I replied. She followed me up the stairs. "I turned your old bedroom into my dressing room," she said with a laugh. "You won't need it anymore anyway, right?" I said nothing, just kept walking until I reached my old room. The door was open, and sure enough, it had been transformed. My pale blue walls were now pink, where my bed had once stood there were now clothing racks filled with designer outfits, my desk had been replaced by a vanity table covered in makeup. I headed back downstairs, intending to offer help in the kitchen despite Mom's refusal. As I approached, I heard the clinking of glasses and peered around the corner. Mom was standing at the counter with her back to me, pouring something from a small bottle into a mug. She quickly tucked the bottle into her pocket when she heard the floor creak beneath my feet. "Cassandra," she said, spinning around, "I was just making your tea. You still like it with honey, right?" "Right," I said, my mind racing. What had she put in that mug? I retreated to the dining room where everyone was gathering. Mom appeared a moment later carrying a tray with drinks. She handed me the mug I'd seen her tamper with. "Your favorite tea," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I forced a smile in return. "Thanks, Mom." As everyone settled in and began passing dishes, I noticed that Isabella had an identical mug to mine. While Mom was distracted serving Gregory, I casually switched our mugs. "Everything looks delicious," I said, taking a small sip from my new mug. I watched Mom watching me, her eyes darting to the mug every few seconds. "So, Cassandra," Gregory said, breaking the silence, "what are your plans for that big house? Seems like a lot of space for one person." "I'm not sure yet," I replied. "For now, I'm just getting used to living there." The conversation continued, but I was only half listening. I was too busy watching Mom's growing nervousness. I decided to stay longer than planned. I needed to know what was happening, what Mom had tried to do to me. Dinner dragged on uncomfortably. Mom hinted I should go, but I pretended that I didn't understand her words. An hour after we'd finished eating, Isabella suddenly stopped mid-sentence while she was telling a story about her college professor. Her face turned pale, and she swayed in her chair. "I don't feel so good," she mumbled, pressing her hand to her forehead. "Isabella." Gregory stood up quickly. "What's wrong?" Before she could answer, Isabella slumped forward, her head hitting the table with a thud. She'd fainted. Everyone jumped up in panic. Gregory rushed to his daughter's side while Lucas stood frozen, staring at his sister with wide eyes. "What's happening?" "Isabella." Mom shrieked, shaking Isabella's shoulder. "Wake up." Gregory checked her pulse. "Amanda, call an ambulance." Mom fumbled for her phone with shaking hands. As she dialed, I cleared my throat. "I think I should mention something," I said calmly. "I accidentally switched mugs with Isabella earlier. I noticed they were identical, and I wasn't paying attention which was which. Maybe she drank something that didn't agree with her." Mom's eyes darted to the empty mug in front of Isabella, then back to me. "No, that's not." "Gregory, call 911 now. Tell them to hurry." Her panicked reaction confirmed my suspicions. I watched as she paced back and forth, muttering to herself. Gregory was on the phone, describing Isabella's symptoms to the dispatcher. "Mom," I said quietly, "what did you put in my tea?" She whirled on me. "Nothing." "Don't be ridiculous." Then why are you so scared? What's happening to Isabella? Shut up, she screamed, her composure completely gone. This is your fault. You switched the drinks. I stepped away and pulled out my own phone, dialing the police. Hello, I'd like to report an attempted poisoning, I said clearly. I believe my mother tried to drug me, but my stepsister got the drink instead. Within minutes, paramedics rushed into the house. As they worked on Isabella, I quietly explained what I had seen, Mom adding something to my tea and my suspicion that she had tried to drug me. The paramedics stabilized Isabella and loaded her onto a stretcher. Her blood pressure is dangerously low, one of them told Gregory. We need to get her to the hospital immediately. As they wheeled Isabella out, police cars pulled up to the house. 2 officers came inside, and I repeated my story. The senior officer, a woman with kind eyes and a firm voice, asked Mom what she had put in the drink. Mom broke down in tears. It was clonidine. I took it from Mrs. Harrison when I was cleaning her house last week. She uses it for high blood pressure. I knew it would make Cassandra's pressure drop, make her dizzy and disoriented while driving. She could have crashed her car, and then she'd need us to help her recover. She'd have to share some of that money with us. The room fell silent. Even Gregory was staring at her in shock. Amanda Mitchell, the officer said, I'm placing you under arrest for attempted murder. Murder? Mom gasped. No. I didn't want to kill her, just hurt her a little. Drugging someone without their knowledge, especially with a medication that could cause a car accident, shows intent to cause serious harm or death, the officer explained as she handcuffed Mom. As they led Mom out to the police car, she turned to look at me one last time. Cassandra, please tell them I didn't mean it. I'm your mother. I said nothing, watching as they put her in the back of the patrol car. Gregory came to stand beside me, his face ashen. I had no idea, he said quietly. I swear, Cassandra, I knew nothing about this. I believed him. Gregory had many faults, but he wasn't violent or vindictive, just selfish and indifferent. You should go to the hospital, I told him. Isabella needs you. He nodded, grabbing his keys and Lucas's arm. Are you going to be okay? I'll be fine, I said. I need to give my statement to the police, and then I'm going home. After they led Mom away, the police officers spent the next 2 hours taking statements. I sat at the dining table, my hands wrapped around a fresh cup of coffee, one I'd made myself, and methodically recounted everything that had happened. As I spoke, I couldn't help but notice the untouched plate of chocolate cake at the center of the table, the same recipe Mom used to make for my birthdays. Miss Mitchell, Detective Bennett said, her voice gentle but firm, we found the bottle of clonidine in your mother's pocket. The prescription label confirms it was stolen from Mrs. Harrison. Given the circumstances and your mother's confession, we have enough evidence to proceed with charges. I nodded, feeling strangely hollow. What happens now? Your mother will be held for arraignment. Given the severity of the charges, attempted murder, theft of prescription medication, conspiracy to commit fraud, she's unlikely to get bail. As the detective spoke, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Gregory. I let it go to voicemail. A text followed immediately, Isabella's stable but they're keeping her overnight. We need to talk about your mother. I ignored that too. The next few days passed in a blur of police stations, lawyers' offices, and hospital waiting rooms. Isabella recovered fully, though the doctors said she was lucky. The dose meant for me could have been fatal given her lower body weight. When she was released, she refused to look at me, as if I was somehow responsible for her mother's actions. But it was during the preliminary hearing that the real bombshell dropped. I sat in the courtroom, watching as my mother, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, was led to the defendant's table. She kept trying to catch my eye, but I focused on the legal pad in front of me, where I'd been absently drawing spirals in the margins. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, stood to address the court. Your Honor, in the course of our investigation into Amanda Mitchell's attempted murder of her daughter, we've uncovered evidence of a broader conspiracy. My head snapped up. Phone records and email communications between the defendant and her husband, Gregory Turner, revealed discussions dating back 3 years, specifically regarding the death of James Mitchell, the defendant's first husband. The courtroom erupted in whispers. I felt the blood drain from my face as the prosecutor continued. In these communications, Mr. Turner and Mrs. Mitchell discussed ways to ensure Mr. Mitchell's car accident would appear accidental. We have evidence that Mr. Turner, using his expertise as a mechanic, tampered with the brake lines of James Mitchell's car. Gregory, who had been sitting 3 rows behind me, suddenly stood up. 2 officers moved to block the exits. Furthermore, the prosecutor continued, we've discovered a series of life insurance policies taken out on James Mitchell in the months leading up to his death, with Mrs. Mitchell as the sole beneficiary. The total value of these policies exceeded $3 million. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. All this time, I'd suspected something was wrong about Dad's death, but I'd never imagined. The judge's gavel crashed down as Gregory tried to make a run for it. Officers tackled him before he reached the door. My mother began screaming, her composed facade finally cracking completely. He made me do it, she shrieked, pointing at Gregory as he was handcuffed. It was all his idea. He said we needed the money. Lucas, who had been sitting next to his father, stumbled to his feet and vomited into a wastebasket. Isabella, pale as chalk, started hyperventilating. The judge called for order, but the damage was done. In the chaos that followed, I sat perfectly still, my mind replaying every moment after Dad's death. The way Mom had seemed more anxious than grieving. How quickly she'd moved in with Gregory. The mysterious calls she'd taken the middle of the night. The preliminary hearing was suspended as new charges were filed. Gregory was arrested for first-degree murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Mom's attempted murder charge was now compounded by conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. That evening, as I sat in Grandfather's study, my study now, the detective called with an update. They'd found more evidence in Gregory's garage, brake fluid, tools with trace evidence matching Dad's car, and a journal detailing the plan in Gregory's own handwriting. He was methodical, Detective Bennett explained. He documented everything, probably as insurance against your mother trying to double-cross him. We're also investigating several other suspicious accidents connected to him. This might not have been their first time. I thanked her and hung up, then walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood red. In the reflection of the glass, I could see the photo of Dad and me at my college graduation, his proud smile forever frozen in time. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Mom's public defender tried to argue for a plea deal, claiming she was under Gregory's influence, but the prosecutor wasn't having it. The evidence was too damning, the crimes too calculated. Isabella and Lucas disappeared from public view, changing their names and moving to another state. I heard through my lawyer that Isabella had checked herself into a psychiatric facility, unable to cope with the revelation that her father was a murderer. The trial was surprisingly quick. The evidence was overwhelming, and both Mom and Gregory turned on each other, each trying to blame the other for everything. The jury took less than 6 hours to reach a verdict. Gregory was sentenced to life without parole for Dad's murder, plus additional years for the conspiracy and fraud charges. Mom received 30 years for her role in Dad's death, plus 12 years for attempting to kill me. The judge ordered the sentences to be served consecutively. As they led her away, Mom made one last attempt to catch my attention. "Cassandra, please. I'm still your mother." I stood up slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time since the dinner party. "No," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the courtroom. "You stopped being my mother the day you chose to kill my father." She crumpled, having to be dragged out by the guards. Gregory, already in shackles, stared straight ahead, his face a mask of stone. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around me, shoving microphones in my face. "Miss Mitchell, how do you feel about the verdict? Will you contest the insurance payouts? Did you suspect your mother's involvement in your father's death?" I pushed through them without comment, but paused at the top of the courthouse steps. The setting sun cast long shadows across the marble stairs, and for a moment, I felt Grandfather's presence beside me, lending me strength. Turning to face the cameras, I spoke clearly and firmly, "Justice has been served, not just for me, but for my father. I hope that anyone else out there suffering abuse or betrayal at the hands of those who should love them knows that the truth will always come to light. No matter how long it takes." That evening, I returned to my home on Maple Grove Drive. The house no longer felt too big or empty, it felt like exactly where I needed to be. I went to grandfather's study and opened the bottom drawer of his desk, pulling out the leather-bound journal he'd left for me. Inside, written in his careful handwriting, was a message I hadn't been ready to read until now. My dearest Cassandra. I've watched you grow into a woman of remarkable strength and integrity, despite the betrayals you've endured. Your father would be proud of who you've become. I've left you not just my wealth, but everything I've discovered about Amanda and Gregory's involvement in James's death. The evidence is in the safe behind the portrait of your father. I'm sorry I couldn't bring this to light while I was alive, I needed to ensure they couldn't escape justice. Use this information wisely, my brave girl. Remember that the greatest revenge is not in destroying your enemies, but in living well despite their attempts to break you. All my love. Grandfather. I closed the journal, tears streaming down my face. Even from beyond the grave, grandfather had been protecting me, gathering evidence, ensuring that justice would eventually be served. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully for the first time in years, knowing that the truth had finally come to light, and those who had betrayed us had paid the price for their crimes. 3 months after the trial, I received an unexpected letter from the women's correctional facility where Mom was being held. Dear Cassandra, she had written. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But there's something you need to know about Gregory's other victims. He didn't just kill James. There were others, 3 more families he destroyed before he met us. I've given Detective Bennett all the details. The next day, Detective Bennett confirmed that Mom's information had led them to reopen 3 cold cases. Gregory had indeed been systematically targeting wealthy families, orchestrating accidents for their husbands. Your mother's testimony will ensure he never sees the outside of a prison again, Bennett told me. She came forward on her own. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, not even anger anymore. Just a deep, quiet certainty that this chapter of my life was finally closing. It was at one of the victim support group meetings that I met Mike. He was a grief counselor who specialized in helping people who had lost family members to violent crimes. Initially, I went to his sessions just to process my own trauma, but something about his gentle strength and quiet understanding drew me in. Over the weeks that followed, our conversations gradually extended beyond the formal counseling sessions. We'd talk over coffee about books, music, our hopes for the future. He never pushed, never rushed, seeming to understand instinctively when I needed space or silence. 6 months later, we had our first official date. I took him to my favorite spot at Pine Valley Lake, where Dad used to take me fishing. As we sat watching the sunset, I found myself telling him everything, about Dad, about Mom's betrayal, about the poison tea. You're the strongest person I've ever met, he said, his voice soft but firm. Not because you survived, but because you still believe in love. We married in a small ceremony in grandfather's, now our, garden. Mike helped me transform the house into a home again. We kept grandfather's library but renovated other rooms, blending old memories with new beginnings. The kitchen where Mom had tried to poison me became my favorite place to bake with Sophie, Mike's 10-year-old daughter from his first marriage. Sophie was like a ray of sunshine, her presence healing parts of me I didn't even know were broken. She loved hearing stories about my dad and grandfather, and would spend hours in the library, curled up in grandfather's old reading chair with one of his books. You're nothing like my real mom, she told me one day, but you're the best bonus mom ever. It was the greatest compliment I could have received. 2 years after our wedding, our daughter Claire was born. Holding her for the first time, I finally understood what real family meant, not the bonds of obligation that had tied me to Mom, but the choice to love and protect someone unconditionally. As I write this, I'm sitting in grandfather's library, watching Sophie teach Claire how to play chess using his old set. Mike is in the garden, planting the roses I've always wanted. The afternoon sun streams through the windows, casting warm light on the life we've built together. Some nights, I still dream about that dinner party, about the mug of poison tea. But now when I wake, instead of fear, I feel gratitude. Every attempt to break me only made me stronger, made me more capable of appreciating the love I've found. I've learned that family isn't about blood or legal ties. It's about choice. Every day, we choose who to trust, who to love, who to forgive. but most importantly, we choose who we become in the face of betrayal. I chose love. And in that choice, I found not just survival, but joy. Not just peace, but purpose. Not just a house, but a home. That was my true inheritance, my perfect revenge. And it was more than enough.